All right, so Duane Keefe D Davis is scheduled to appear for his arraignment on October 19th for the murder of Tupac. So he's facing first-degree murder charges, and his arraignment was actually scheduled for October 4th, so just yesterday. But apparently the attorney that he hired wasn't present, and so the arraignment ended up getting continued. And, that's not out of the ordinary. Obviously, if you're a busy attorney and you got a lot of work, you might have other cases going on. So they ended up setting it over to October 9th. And at the arraignment is where Keefe D will be presented with the charging document, also known as the complaint, that shows what his charge is. And he's being charged with just one count of murder. After receiving that complaint and being made aware of his constitutional rights, he's going to enter a not guilty plea, and he's going to deny all of the allegations. And I'm sure a lot of you are probably like, hey, he's guilty of this. How is he going to plead not guilty? What we have to understand is, again, every person that is accused of a crime in the United States is presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. And, there's no exception to this, right? So it doesn't matter how we feel about the crime. It doesn't matter how much we might not like the person accused of the crime. It doesn't matter, how much we love the alleged victim. Again, he's going to be innocent until he's proven guilty. And that's either by way of him pleading guilty, which we certainly don't anticipate, or him going to trial and being found guilty in front of a jury. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know how you feel about charges being filed this many years later. We're talking about murder charges being filed almost 30 years after the slaying of Tupac. We know that he is just one of the most beloved artists of all time, right? Almost 3 decades later after his passing, his music is still played around the world, and, many people still consider him to be amongst the top 10 rappers of all time. But, Tupac was a special person. I mean, he wasn't just a rapper. He was a dancer. He was an amazing actor. He was a poet. He was a revolutionary. He was a thinker. Sadly, his death is just a tragedy that still has people feeling some type of way. And, it's a situation on the legal side of things where Keefe D's own words are really what led to him getting arrested and now facing these murder charges. Law enforcement has known for many years exactly how this murder went down because Keefe D told them. Law enforcement had apparently built up a pretty large drug case against Keefe D, and essentially they made an agreement with him that if he were to provide information regarding Tupac's murder, then they wouldn't move forward with the drug charges. And it's a pretty substantial drug case. I mean, he was apparently facing life in prison based on this case. And so he enters into this proffer agreement, and it is a limited non-prosecution agreement. So essentially, none of what Keefe D ended up saying to law enforcement could ultimately be used against him. And you would think, right? You would think, and you would be absolutely right, that if you essentially got away with murder or got away with being the ringleader or shot caller or an active participant in a murder, that you would probably thank your lucky stars or thank the Lord or the universe, whatever you believe in, and be quiet about it for the rest of your life, right? That would be the wise thing to do. And as a defense attorney, that's certainly what I would advise somebody to do if they were in that situation. If they got the gift of this limited non-prosecution agreement where you give the truth, but they can't use your words against you, I'd say, hey, that would be the wise thing to do, but that's obviously not what Keefe D did. And, as I thought about it, there are two very apparent reasons why you would go and give a bunch of interviews on this topic and even write a book where you discuss your involvement in a murder case. And those two reasons are clout and money. If you have a hand in killing one of the biggest artists of all time, there is a lot of significance that comes along with that, right? And you can see in some of the interviews that Keefe D gave, he was just so arrogant in talking about it. I mean, he made light of the situation, was essentially, making fun of the situation and just completely dismissive of the individuals who were hurt and are still hurt by the situation. And, you know, again, there's many different ways that people can derive significance. You can log on to social media right now and see just scrolls and scrolls of people looking for significance in different ways. And so, like I said, you know, having a hand in killing Tupac definitely gives you significance. The proof is in the pudding in that there's all these interviews that have millions of views. So people are very interested in hearing what he has to say. Again, money is the other reason, right? And I don't know exactly how much he's made from all these interviews, but I assume that there are thousands of dollars that he's been making from each one of these interviews. You know, just a couple months ago when you saw that law enforcement was executing a search warrant on a house in his wife's name. So that happened in July, so a couple months ago. So you knew something was up. Again, this was such a frustrating situation because it seemed, you know, all these years, law enforcement has known what's going on, but yet there were no arrests made. Everyone else that was involved in this situation has since died. So Keefe D is the last man standing. He's 60 years old. I don't know if you watched the video of him being presented in court today. So he's now an older gentleman. I mean, he just looks tired at this point, right? But yeah, I mean, you see him facing these charges at 60 years old, and it's a tragedy. But yeah, when they executed that search warrant, they ended up getting tablets, an iPhone, computers. They had USB and hard drives, pictures, and law enforcement, in giving their statement, they basically revealed that the evidence that they seized essentially helped corroborate the information that they already had. And I hope the money and the clout were worth it, because it is literally Keefe D's own words that led to him eventually getting arrested. I mean, you would imagine that if he had never given these interviews and had never written this book, this case probably would have just remained closed forever. But now that we're here, I mean, a couple of legal issues that naturally come up is whether there's a statute of limitations, right? You know, this murder happened, you know, almost 30 years ago, and Keefe D is barely getting charged. But, you know, there is no statute of limitations on murder. And so it doesn't matter that it happened almost 30 years ago. They are well within their right to prosecute him for this. The other issue that comes up is that Keefe D has never been the person alleged to be responsible for actually pulling the trigger, right? And so you might think, well, why is he getting charged with murder if he didn't pull the trigger? But the reality is he does not have to have pulled the trigger. Under Nevada law, and many other states share this law, as a participant in this crime, he doesn't have to have actually pulled the trigger. Essentially, if you help somebody commit a crime, then you are equally guilty as a principal. And in this situation, he's alleged to have procured the gun. So he was the one that got it, and he's the one who's alleged to be the mastermind behind this. He's the leader. He's the shot caller. So just because he is not alleged to be the shooter, that doesn't mean that he cannot be charged with first-degree murder. And that's exactly what he's being charged with. And, you know, this case went before a grand jury, so they would have had 23 random citizens of Nevada review the facts of this case, both the prosecution side of the case, so, you know, the facts that we've heard in these press conferences, in addition to any exculpatory evidence. So that basically means any evidence that would point to Keefe D's innocence. So in grand jury proceedings, the prosecutor basically acts as both the prosecutor and the defense. And ultimately, the grand jury returned an indictment, and that means that they found that there was probable cause, meaning that there's reason to believe that a crime has been committed, and that's obviously the murder of Tupac, and that Keefe D committed this crime, or at least was an active participant such that he would be responsible for the murder of Tupac. Well, this case is obviously ongoing and developing, and we'll definitely continue to speak on it. Let me know if you have any questions about what has happened so far and what you see coming up ahead. I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.